Sweet. So today we wanted to chat a little bit about our story, what brought us to the point that we're now, who we've worked with, why we've chosen this path, and all the stuff that kind of happened along the way that brought us to where we're now, and outline a little bit of what we now believe is a pathway that can really take you all the way from where you are now to having the most amazing relationships or your ideal relationship with an amazing woman, right? So I would say the best place to start would be just to share a little bit, and you can start with that, Leo. A little bit of your background, where you're from, and maybe the biggest milestones that really got you to women themselves, like to looking into this. Like, I want to get better with women. I want to know how women like
Mhm.
how they work, how they think, and all that stuff, psychology. And then from there too, we can dive a little bit deeper into what led us to where we're now.
All right. Yeah. First of all, I'm really excited that we are starting this. This is something that we have been planning to do for some time now, and it's really exciting that we are now doing it, and we can share with everyone. So yeah, feel free to always put your comments down and ask us questions. It would be really nice to have this back and forth with the community. So I would start. Well, I don't want to go so far into my journey, but I would say that, well, first I'm from Brazil, and in my country we have a cultural, let's say, that is way more. I'll put it as seductive, or we tend to be flirty quite a lot, especially with strangers. It's like a normal way of being in Brazil. And growing up with that and not being, let's say, this type of person that could do that or could fully express myself in this way, I had a lot of struggles, meeting women in general. So yeah, I remember like specifically one moment in my life where I kind of knew I was hitting my rock bottom in terms of relationships, and it was when I went out with one friend of mine, a really good looking guy, and we were like in this party, and I was doing kind of like, well, in my mind I was doing a lot of work to meet women, and I was talking to them and trying to be funny and doing all these things. And let's say this was more like a natural way, a natural expression. It was not the most calibrated way, for sure. I learned that along the way, but I was trying, and I just couldn't get anything, to be honest. And it was so frustrating. And then I remember at some part of this night, I came back to talk to my friend, and one of the girls that I saw in the party that I talked to, that was like really, really nice, she just came to him and they start chatting, and they both left together to, I think it was her home. I don't remember quite sure. And then I remember that day coming back home and just like putting my head in the pillow and feeling like so bad, because I was putting so much effort. I thought that I was doing what was necessary, and my friend that was not doing anything kind of just got the girl, and that made me feel like, oh shit, I must be like the worst guy ever. Like my friend, he doesn't even need to say hi or anything, and he's getting all these girls, and I'm putting all this work and I'm not getting anything. And that's when I started to search for ways to, let's say, improve my relationship life. And then we can say that I got into this whole the game, like most of the old school guys.
Just to clarify, how old were you at that point?
I was, I think, 21. 21, yeah. Well, I do have to say that before that, I was in a long term relationship, like from 17 to 21 ish. I was in this relationship for like 3 years, so 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, from 17 to 20. And yeah, it was like super toxic relationship. Uh, it was like kind of like the first girl that I managed to get into a relationship with. And then I put myself so much into that, kind of like I lost myself in this relationship. I was not fully developed, 17 years old, super stupid. And yeah, so I did had this relationship experience, of course. I'm not going to say that I never had anything before that, and but then the relationship ended, and you are like in this state of pain, trying to numb the pain, let's say, trying to meet new people, and just didn't work for me at all. And I was like, oh shit, I lost like this only girl that I had a chance with because of this and this and that, and now I can't get any other girls. And it was just like this snowball of personal, yeah, pain, let's call it that way. And yeah, so I searched for this. I end up reading this book called The Game, which a lot of old school guys will know what I'm talking about. Back in the days, it gave me hope. Let's say that there is a way to improve myself that I couldn't see before. So I'm not going to say like, oh yeah, this book is shit. Don't read this. Don't get into that. I mean, now I can look at this with another perspective. But at the moment that I found this book, for me was like, okay, there is a way to improve. And that for me was powerful because it started to push me into a path of not only seeing relationships, improvement in relationships, but improvement in all the other aspects of my life. So, like having my own businesses, working on my career, thinking about money, places that I wanted to live. So I started to shift my mind into this way of, okay, my life is not great at the moment, but there is a way and there is a place to go. And I think that was really important. And from that, I started consuming other kinds of content, more like, let's say, into this pickup ish stuff back in the days, and going out a lot with like this group of guys, like they call it the inner circle. We were going out like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and yeah, trying to implement all the statics that we were learning in the books. And it was just not working. I found most of them, to be honest, too gimmick that I wouldn't even try. But I would at least try and talk to the girls in the clubs and be a bit more centered, let's say. But it was just also not working at all. So for like, let's say, 1 to 2 years, going out almost 4 days a week and burning myself out, also not getting much. And when I did get some results, it was just not satisfying to me because I was not really connecting with the other person. So that's also when I discovered another path, which was more like spiritual path. And that is the path where I also met you and important coaches that I had experience with. I started also working with this guy that was like a more like spiritual dating coach. That's when I saw this other side where I started to rely so much on the external. And of course, I'm going like not so deep because I don't want to stay like 1 hour just talking about my background. But yeah, I got more into the spiritual part, and that's when I realized, okay, there's inner work that needs to be done, and it's not so much about also these external things that I'm doing to get that. And so that completely shifted my mind, changed it so much for me. I think that was the point when things started to click. I started to push away all this pickup shit that I was learning. And I also started developing and getting the things that I actually wanted, not only in my relationship life, but also in business life and yeah, like my personal finances. I started traveling the world. Started to see other cultures. And now I see a balance between the spiritual part in my life and the other aspects of it. Well, not a balance. I see that it's not like a separate thing. It's more like a combined thing.
Mhm.
And I would say that's the path where I am right now, where it's like having all this experience for years of both the spiritual, more like this technique, stuff, and like combining everything and seeing that there is a better way to go about life, and there is a better way to experience relationships. And yeah, that's kind of like my one of my passions at the moment, to be able to share, to be able to coach guys and to present them so they don't have to go through all of these years of, let's call it, suffering that I've been
Mhm.
through. Oh yeah, that's a good
Good
resume
summary.
of the, yeah, summary of the this whole story. And
Yeah.
I think you have also a kind of like a similar path.
Mhm. Yeah, one thing that I actually wanted to say before, because it was very powerful for you to say this, and that's in terms of when you embark on this journey and you get in touch with different authors, with different coaches, to not feel like, let's say even now that we present you with this information and we ultimately say, well, there is a more holistic path potentially that you can take so you don't have to suffer for like all these years. That doesn't mean if you come across, let's say, the book The Game and it really resonates with you, that doesn't mean to just discard that, because there's still something in that that might help you on your path, like a stepping stone towards the path that we're talking about now. So it's not like to judge yourself for it, not to beat yourself up and be like, oh, I should just, or resist that even. If you're
Mm-hmm.
drawn to it, then there's still something there for you to understand. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really powerful. And it's funny because I also read the book The Game just a little bit later. So for me, the way things started, it was I was just feeling very lonely and secluded. Like I'm from a small village in Germany, like 300 people, and there wasn't much going on in the village, of course. And then with girls, also, I always felt like an outsider. I never really fit in, like in my village. That's where it started. And then later, when I was around people too, I didn't really feel like I know how women work, how women function. And what really bothered me was that my younger brother, who was 3 years younger, always seemed to get girls, like
Mm-hmm.
always be in a relationship with some girl or woman interested in him. And I'm like, how the fuck do you do that? Just tell me, bro. And obviously, I didn't even want to admit that because I was his older brother, and I felt like I have to ask my younger brother now for dating. Like, what do you do with these girls that they're interested in you? That felt so shitty. And at the time, I couldn't get over the fact, like I didn't want to. I felt like I was lowering myself down
Mm-hmm.
to like I have to go down here to be like and admit that I don't have a fucking plan, that I don't have a clue about women. And that to me felt like I couldn't even do that. And so when I was 13, I think that was the first time I met a girl. Like we were on this like skiing trip with school, and I remember I was asking her out, and like my heart was just like thumping. I was so uncomfortable. Her friend was just chilling up on the staircase, just watching the whole thing, and I felt so uncomfortable. And then I did it, and the girl was like, "I'll think about it." And I'm like, "What?" And that really left a bad taste in my mouth. And then at the end of the night, like we kind of were saying goodbye, and then she started kissing me, and I was like, "Oh shit, I guess this is on." But the whole relationship only lasted for a week because I had so many behaviors that were extremely needy, and I was like literally all over her all the time. That once we got back from the skiing trip, like after just a few short days, it was over. And then after that, it was like a long stretch of no women until eventually, I think around 19 or 20, I found out about pickup. I think it started with like Richard La Huina, the British guy, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it was during my final exams in high school, and I was like, "Holy shit, is this for real?" Like, I didn't think it was possible to learn this stuff, you know. And that's kind of how it started. Then I found out about the game. I found out about RSD, and I was watching all these videos and stuff. And then when I was 20, 21 or 22, I decided I really need to make a change. Like I need to get out of my village. I want to learn this and master this because I felt my life was really not in a great place like yours. So, and obviously with my life not being great, I decided I really wanted to master this. And then reach out to some guys that really knew what the fuck they were doing with women. So I reached out to this guy in Toronto, to another guy, another coach from a different company, just for like an internship, and then ultimately landed that internship, moved to Toronto, poured a bunch of money, like 5 grand. I was like, I'm gonna figure this thing out. And at the time, I didn't know it was supposed to be only 6 months. And then ultimately, it turned out to be 3 years in total. And along the way, I had many amazing relationships, interactions, and sexual experiences with women. Like I went out like crazy, obviously. And then eventually, though, I realized I still was feeling fear. I still was feeling the shame, like the approach anxiety was still there. Like many things that I felt this journey would actually help me get rid of. Like I wanted to be free of the shame. I wanted to feel free internally, externally, and I thought this path would actually take me there. And that kind of slowly pushed me towards like looking into other teachers, like the same teacher that you were talking about, right? And I found his content. I was like, ooh, this is really interesting. Like it's a totally different way, and it doesn't seem like he has any approach anxiety. So what the fuck's he doing?
Mhm.
And I wanted to learn more about this, and that's kind of what got me into spirituality. And I talked to him and meditation and all of that stuff, and slowly that kind of shifted my way of like away from pickup. And I really, there was a hard stop at some point where I was like, this shit is really toxic, like this is
Mhm.
so bad. And I had to kind of break with that so hard in order to move in a different direction. And now I see it differently too, where I can see the value in the going out part, in the approaching part, and many elements of it. It's just that the place where it's coming from now has fundamentally changed. And that is kind of what you're talking about too, like the holistic aspect of it, right? Now we have an approach that really incorporates all the other stuff. Whereas before
Mhm.
it was just like very individual, separate pieces that we're trying to work on. Ooh, let me work on my confidence. Let me work on how to lead a woman. Let me work on this thing, right?
Mhm.
And we're like missing the bigger picture, I feel.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
me, it was also kind of difficult when I started like getting this content from RCD and companies like that, because I would meet a lot of these guys that they would just have a completely different view on life and things in general than me. For example, I come from a religious family, like Japanese religion, which does embody a lot of like the spirituality that later I would find out and I would be connected for some time that we both worked on. And that with my political view, which is completely different to most of these guys that were in this pickup field, and also like most of, let's say, that's red pill guys there are in. I would say it can be not everyone that was on RZD is now going towards this path. I don't think so, but back in the days already, I would constantly have troubles talking to these guys and having just like regular conversations, be friends with them, just because everything was so different. And everyone was there just for one reason, to have a wing that will be either a good wing that will lead them to get more girls, or that was basically it. So even when there's someone in the group that was so bad, that was ruining everything for everyone, he would easily be kicked out of the group, or people would stop hanging out with him because he was not leading people to their desired goal of getting the girl, right? And that for me was also a difficult moment because that was basically my whole life at that point, working on that. Of course, I was still in university and doing my other stuff. But most of the guys that I was hanging out with and building relationships were not even guys that I was interested in having these relationships. It's just because I had a goal and I thought that I needed to be related to these guys because they were also in the same path of getting girls, let's say. And when I started to push that away, things started to change, not only because of content itself or the things that I started to learn, but the people that I also surrounded myself, kind of. So it was healthier relationships that I was building, not only in terms of the girls that I was meeting, but also my friends, my circle of friends. my coaches, and everything that relates to that. And I think this balance between what you are trying to achieve, the people that you are meeting, in this environment that you put yourself into, I think that also plays a huge role. Like when you're saying that, okay, I needed to move out of my village. I think sometimes that's the move for a lot of guys that they have to do. It's kind of like put themselves into a different environment, meeting different set of people that you all work together in a way that makes sense for you in your life. I'm still friends with some of these guys from these groups, but not all. And a lot of them, I still look back and I see that they're still like in this path that I don't find is the correct way to do it, but it's their life. So, who am I to judge what they're going through? But I feel that they're still stuck in the same thing that I was 6 to 7 years ago. And I think this exploration and taking these risks of trying to move forward is a really important part of this work. Kind of like making a decision to really change, because it's easier to just stay in the same level that you currently are. I'm not sure if you experienced that in any shape or level, or if that is relatable also to your experience.
Yeah, I would say for me, it was definitely, I mean, I was kind of like one of those people. I got into the pickup stuff, and then that's kind of all that mattered to me, just about improvement, improvement. And people hated to be around me. They were just like, you were like so unpleasant to be around, like so rigid and just like focused on all this stuff and only that. And the only breaks I gave myself was like sleeping at night, and then the whole day was planned out and
Mm,
optimized. I also felt like this pressure because I was like, I'm from the village. I'm like, I don't want to, if I go back now, like I really have to make this count. So I was in Canada and I'm like, I'm going to figure out a way to make this work. So I had that commitment. And not only that, I think what also helped me at the time was this belief that, because my older brother was really struggling with women, and I was like, this is not just for me. So I almost had like a higher purpose for why I was doing it. And that was
mhm,
like also my older brother. I was thinking my younger brother, I could also help him have better relationships by figuring this stuff out. And so that was really a big driving force for me to really put myself through a lot of stuff, like a lot of discomfort and uncertainty that most guys, I think, would normally not do. And that's
mhm,
why I think on some level, a lot of motivational speakers say, like, what's your why? What's your why? Pick a higher why. And some guys, they're doing like they want to buy a house for their mother or whatever it is, right? And that gets them initially on this path of, okay, I'm going to put myself into all this uncertainty, and that's going to allow me to ultimately become the man that I want to be. But I think
mhm,
the key is the uncertainty, to allow really for, like, to put yourself in a place where you're not yet ready, and then you have to like figure stuff out along the way. Like you can't plan it all out. And I think a lot of times with pickup too, we surround ourselves with these people because we think they know. So they have the
mhm,
right way. And then we can just quickly absorb that and soak it up. And then we're like done.
mhm,
But then you realize it's not well rounded. Like this, it's too separate from everything else. And that's what you describe with these guys, where you can't have proper relationships with them because it's all about women. It's like that's all that matters. Like you wake up in the morning and it's just about how do I get better with women.
mhm,
Everything is geared towards that. So you're not at all in a balanced place. And to
mhm,
me, I found that out later when I moved into spirituality and these other things. And I think that was a pattern for me too, just like to really go hardcore into whatever I was doing. Like once I've committed, it was just 100%. Like no matter
mhm,
what. I would sacrifice sleep. I would sacrifice hanging out with people, like with my family and stuff. And it was just that.
mhm,
And so to really summarize the point that I was making, what I was saying is really to commit before you're ready, before you feel like I have everything in place, I have everything controlled, I know the exact outcome. Just commit, do it, and then you're going to learn along the way. That's really how life is going to teach you.
mhm. Yeah. I think an important point also for us to mention here, especially nowadays, like with all this cancellation type of things, it doesn't matter what someone is building or the content that that person is expressing, if he says one thing wrong, it should be disregarded completely. And I think that's not the approach that you want to go about life in general, not only dating, where we do see a bunch of these things that we learned in the past. Well, I would say we do, but you can correct me if you don't think that's true. But for me, especially, I do see a lot of this content that I consumed that I thought was correct as now being more toxic than not. But I still see a lot of value in many things that I've learned during those days. And I think it's important for us to not be so rigid about certain things because it's usually an indication of the things that we need to work ourselves. So let's say when we have really rigid ideas of relationship or let's say sex, that's usually because we do have some kind of trauma or something that some shadow related to that, and we push that so strongly, let's say, to not uncover that or be open to even experiment. So let me just give you an example. I never saw this like one night stand thing as something that I wanted to pursue. And then as I started working towards that, and I started to realize that I was just afraid of performing. I was just afraid of, okay, one day is not enough for me to show everything that I have. So then I would go to this one night stand, let's say, situation, and I'll be so in my head, so anxious, I wouldn't be able to properly perform, let's say. So whenever I see this type of content being pushed or this type of coaches talking about this and like, yeah, going for one night stands, I would always push it against me because I had a lot of fear to do that. And as I experienced and as I had like this first-hand experience, like I don't have problems with that anymore, but I can do say that I still find myself looking for things that are more long term, even if it's not like proper relationship than one night stand. But I had to experience that. I had to reincorporate that. I had to, okay, yeah, let's experiment this. Let's see what can we get out of this. And then we can make a decision. Okay, yeah, is this content for me? No. Is this thing for me? No. Is this activity for me? Yes. No. So by being able to experiment and to go towards things that seem like it's not aligned with what you agree in the moment, I think it's important for you to expand, even if in the end you decide that that is not the way you want to go forward.
Basically, what you're saying is ultimately like really going against how most of us operate when we walk through this life. And that is we have things that we want and like, oh, this is cool. I want to do this and that. Like we pursue the things that we want, right? And what you're saying is the things that we have a strong aversion to oftentimes hold the greatest price for us. Like the
Mm-hmm.
things that we really are rejecting really harshly. We're like, this is not it. No, fuck off. Like this is no, 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 no. I'm not listening to that type of coach or this type of information. That
Mm-hmm.
in that is oftentimes something that we still feel incomplete about or that we still haven't integrated, that we like that's kind of like the next level step for us in our life to evolve, to continue
Mm-hmm.
further. And I totally agree with that. I had the same thing around like same thing where I felt, when I kind of met women and then I went on dates and even slept with women, I never felt like I was just trying to do it like just to have sex with them once. It's almost like my selfish desire just to get off. Like, I could just like use a puppet for that, like a sex puppet, sex doll, and just to masturbate myself. That's why I felt like some other guys that I was living with were using that for. And I really harshly judged it. I was like, damn, he's just focusing on himself, like no compassion for the woman. Like, where the fuck is his heart, right? And it was because I was so imbalanced in myself that I was so focused on the heart, on the compassion, on the consideration of the woman's feelings all the time that I didn't have the other side. And that triggering, like what I saw in him that really triggered me was, for me, eventually it became clear, like this is a thing that I still need to go into. I'm pushing that away because there's shame, there's fear around all these
Mhm.
things, right? Based on my own trauma. Right. And so for me, it was necessary to then go into that direction, which was not necessarily comfortable. And that's why we do this work of like emotional integration, that we can put ourselves in places and situations where this stuff is coming up, right? The fear, the anxiety, the shame, etc. And that to me was, I mean, it was mind blowing because that really changes your whole perception of how you look at your life. Instead of then looking at what do I want to do to feel good about myself, you're going to look at what are the things that are triggering me right now? What are the things
Mhm.
that I really don't like? And then you can actually uncover that, and that takes you in a totally different direction. So
Mhm.
overall, I would say too, like this whole cancellation culture, and I think that's what it's called, right? Where people are just like, well, I don't like this, gone,
Yeah.
like out of
Yeah.
my reality. Because ultimately, we have to just remember that the goal of life and in life is just to be able to fully experience life, all of it, where there is no pushing away, there's no just pulling towards certain things and pushing others away. It's like, how can you fully embrace all of it?
Mhm. Yeah.
So
I've
wherever, go
sorry.
ahead. Go
You
on.
can finish your point.
Yeah, I was just saying, so wherever you feel like triggered, or wherever you feel there's a resistance to any aspect of life, that really means there's more for you to uncover. So
Mhm.
don't just say like, I'm going to cut this off and push it away. Just be like, let me go into this. And oftentimes it's not going to feel comfortable. So be okay. Again, coming back to the uncertainty, it's like you want to actually venture into that and just have tools that allow you to keep venturing into it. And that gradually is putting all the pieces together for you.
Mhm. I don't remember who was saying that specifically, but I think it was kind of interesting to see that a lot of people that venture in this cancellation culture, meaning they pushed away everything that is against their first instinct of not liking it, they are kind of behaving in a 5 years old mind, or it was something like this, where yeah, they are not able to receive different opinions, receive different type of content, and they feel that someone thinking different than them, it's a direct attack on themselves. So that's why like a lot of these people would say that, oh, if you think this way, you're murdering people like me, because
Mm.
they have this idea that everything that is contrary to their beliefs is a personal attack to themselves, which is the same type of behavior that's, let's say that I don't remember if it's 5 years old or 4 years old would have, kind of like this self identity strongly attached to their beliefs or the things that they experience in firsthand, and they are unable to see these different things in life, which I think it's, in the end, one of the beautiful things about traveling. I don't think is like seeing these gorgeous landscapes and buildings and whatever. It's nice, but it's actually seeing how the cultures different in many many ways. Even dating, it's like dating in Brazil is not the same as dating here in the Eastern Europe. It's not the same as dating in most countries in EU. Well, EU is big. There's East West, but let's say the West part, Germany. The culture is just different, and being able to see that, to access that, to also see that the road is not the same as you think and that you might think should behave. I think it's great for our personal development, and it either strengthens our beliefs in the things that we think are true in the moment because we see the opposite. We truly understand the opposite and we make a strong decision to keep thinking the way we do, which is often not the case. Or we see that there's a different way to go about life and to go about the things that we strongly believe. And that's why I think my whole journey, it doesn't mean that everyone needs to go to the same journey, but that's why I feel that having gone from this like pick apart the game, spiritual, and to where we are now was important because I was able to experience a broader range of things. And I can also see people in all these different levels and be like, oh, okay, I see where you're going on right now. I see where you need to explore a bit more before you can come back home, let's say, as we call in spirituality. Before you can come back home, yeah, you need to experience that. Go do that. Go do your day game stuff, whatever it is, because you need that. You need to experience that to be able to come back now.
Yeah, and there's no judgment in any of these things. Like when we say this, there's no, you know, like it's an actual necessary required step. Like that's how you can look at it. Required step in your development, in your evolution. So I think what's really helpful to understand then is in life that there are three different things, right? I said there's the wanting, and then we go after the things that we want, that we want, that we want. There's things that we need, right? So the wants are our desires. Then there's the things that we need, which is like oxygen, which is water, which is food. And then there's also the things that are required. And kind of like you said, let's say you going out and day gaming, or you like it doesn't matter what it is ultimately. If it's pickup, if it's something else, that might be a required step for you, right? So this is all highly unique, and we can't tell you that that's where there's no one path to get you there. Like we found a way that have helped us tremendously, and I think that's what this ultimately is all about. We want to share our perspective because there's many different paths out there. There's many different teachers out there that can help you move in the same direction, but it's really about, does this particular approach resonate, right? And and that's what ultimately I found. That's what makes you a high value man. Like we talk about being high value, and I think especially in the pickup industry, that's a big thing. Like how do I become a high value man? And to me, a high value man is someone who's fully, like who's really well rounded in all aspects, who can fully embrace and receive life, all of it. Whereas there's no exclusion, there's full inclusion. There's always in a state of receiving, and part of that is we have to put our own beliefs and our own fears and all of that aside temporarily and say, okay, I'm not going to assume that I know everything. I think that was the biggest thing for me that really tremendously helped me on my journey, is to never believe that I already fully know it. I was always in that stage still of being a student of life, regardless of who I was working with, right? And just continually receiving. And that sooner or later is going to correct everything that's going on inside of you. The information that you're receiving, you're going to be able to separate and distinguish and discern what is actually the truth, where you actually need to move, rather than just like fully believing it, and then it becomes a belief system, and then you don't know anymore. It's this, like, you're no longer in touch with the truth. You're just like set in your ways now, and you have the blinders on, and you're just like boom, this
Mm.
direction. So I think that really really served me well.
Mm. Yeah, I think the more we can open ourselves to discover and to receive, like you said, the more well rounded we will be to explore life fully. And I think that's one of the points that we don't see much in the pickup industry, which is it's just this narrow idea of how to attain and get specific things that doesn't encompass all the other things that comes from different aspects of life. And it comes also from us trying to see the other person and what the other person is feeling or what the other person is wanting. It's almost like the other person is just a AI or NPC, and we go and do things to be able to get that specific target. So it's almost like we are taking away all the life experience from that person or the wants from that person, and just thinking that we can do something for that person that we are going to achieve our results. And then it's like, and that's when a lot of this friction comes from. It's like the idea that I want this, the other person want that, and then you start the friction. Instead of getting out of this friction, stay in the same realm of connection and having this beautiful, I'll use like this more spiritual term of like this non-dual experience, like attuning to the things that you do see in everyone's life, that's everyone's life, where it's like this place of full connection that doesn't necessarily need to happen in a mental level, and you can just attune to that to be able to connect with people and to have beautiful relationships with someone that thinks completely different than you.
I think that's really powerful because it really encompasses, like, there's many things that you just said. And the one thing, first of all, I want to say is that's really what this whole approach that we're taking is all about. This is not just about women. We want you to master every single aspect of life. And that's what I found that this approach is actually going to do. Every single one of your relationships, every, like, your career, the choices you're making, it's a complete, like, makeover. And that's why we're not trying to do, like, just focusing on the women, not just how do I attract a woman, what do I say to a woman, like all of that stuff does fall into place when this approach, like, that's why we go holistic, so every single part is included. And where you're talking about this sense of non-separation, that's really, you can experience that ultimately when you do this type of work, where the separation drops away and there is simply connection. Like, your belief systems don't get in the way anymore. And a big part of that is really we get in touch with our beingness, which is inherent in our body. So we leave the mind, we actually drop into our bodies, and we open ourselves up to really receiving that. It's already there. It's just normally our mind is so noisy and constantly, like, pulling us out of it, including our traumas, like all of these things pulling us out of the experience of the love, the connection, the peace that's already inherent in life. And that's why ultimately we find that this approach seems to be, I don't want to say superior, but definitely more fruitful than a lot of other approaches out there, because it really gets straight to the core of things. And what I found too, instead of, like, spending decades of my life, like, trying out all this shit, there's so much noise out there. I found in a matter of a couple of months, maybe a few years, like, you can be completely set for the rest of your life. And that to me, it almost sounds crazy to say that. Like, it's like you can figure out life fully in a matter of, let's say, a few years. And then it can simply be. And I think that's the point, like, that we're all trying to get to, right? Where can we just completely be, where we don't have to do anymore, where we don't have to learn anymore, where we don't have to figure shit out anymore. Like, I think most of us are just tired at this point. Like, this, so all the stuff that we feel like we have to do, and our to-do lists are just, like, so long. Our New Year's resolutions, and I said this yesterday, I'm not setting any New Year's resolutions. I set intentions now, right? With the intention that I'm setting, like, that's going to take me all the way. And I let life do the heavy lifting, and it's going to show me all the things, all the areas and directions I still need to move into to really come back to a place of being fully integrated. And then when you can fully receive life, there's nothing you need to do. Like, everything is there, because the peace, the love, the joy, it's already inherent in life. It's not something we need to just, like, get. Like, you're not getting it from doing. You're only receiving it by being. It's a state of being that you can tap into. And I think that's everything that we're talking about here will lead you directly to that place.
Yeah, I think that that should cover, yeah, most of things that we wanted to bring today. I would just add, like, this small experience yesterday, which, well, I don't recommend anyone to do it. So let's start with that. But I went to do some snowboarding here in the city.
Hold on, you first have to tell them where you are right now.
Oh yeah, I'm in Kiev right now. I came back, last few weeks to the
So for
city
everyone who
again.
doesn't know, there's a war going on right now between Russia and Ukraine. And he's living in Ukraine right now, which is being bombarded, and there's airstrikes happening. So yesterday you decided to go snowboarding.
Yeah, I mean, when there's no air raids, it's like the chances of something happening without you knowing that there is a chance for that to happen is quite low, unless you're super close to the war zone, like where the
Yeah.
actual battle is happening, because the missiles come so fast that you can't really track. Okay, it's coming. No, you see, okay, yeah, it's coming. It's here. But yeah, so like this, yeah, the air raid started. And to be honest, I was not paying too much attention, because it's just like, okay, the chances of this hitting me, it's low. And if it does, I guess, yeah, it's part of life. That would be not life anymore. But and then I was like, okay, I'm just going to go snowboard. So I was snowboarding, so on and so forth. Then I stopped to get like a hot dog and drink some tea. And then at some point, like I just hear like this strong noise behind me, and like my hair, I could feel like my hair going like forward, and some people in front of me like just looking like this like, surprised face. And then I turned and it's like 1 kilometer away, like maybe more, like 2 to 3, like this huge smoke coming out and like this explosion near to me. And I was just looking at that like, oh, okay, what the fuck? But then the next thing that I thought was not like the fear. The fear came after this, that I was like, okay, the chances of this happening again, it's super low. So maybe I should just go back and continue snowboarding. And then I hear another explosion in front of me now, and one to the right. And that's when like this rush and this fear comes, like this, let's say, survival mode that is ingrained to us comes in. I was like, okay, yeah, it's time to fuck off. Uh, yeah, but I don't think you need to go through this kind of experience, like this uncertainty. Like it doesn't need to be so raw. I think for me, it's a really personal thing. The reason why I'm back here, which we can discuss in another time. Uh, but I think it's kind of like I have this feeling more and more these days, where for me personally, to be able to fully experience life, I need to be ready to lose my life. Kind of like I can only fully live when I'm okay with the fact that I can die right now.
Yeah.
And for some people, it might sound suicidal. And I can admit that I had this in my life at some point of my life. But I see it in another way now, where it's like the fact that I'm okay in in a mental level, because when shit comes to fans, like your natural behavior will come in and you will try to survive either way. But it's like in a mental level, the okayness with the idea that I cannot be alive tomorrow allows me to fully embrace life, to fully be here at this point.
I mean, guys, that's the ultimate giving up of control, the control over your life. Really living on the edge. And I think Hemingway did the same thing. He went to war zones to write his, I think he wrote, what is it, novels or like pieces that he wrote. And he was living, like he went to the front where the war was
Mhm.
happening to get in touch with that sense of like, I could die any second. And that sparked an aliveness in him, the creativity. And that's really ultimately testimony. We're not saying you need to do this, but it's ultimately testimony to the fact that if you venture fully into uncertainty, the aliveness is going to come. The creativity is going to come. The spontaneity is going to come because you're fully in touch now with the source. It's like as close as you can get with the source. And that's why this is a big part of like, it doesn't have to be a big thing, but in the beginning, like to actually venture into these places where you're not trying to control your life, we're not trying to control your circumstances, and you're opening yourself up to something new happening. And that in itself, even though it might seem scary, is going to bring more aliveness right away.
Mhm. And I think it also points you towards the things that truly matters to you, because it's like this can be your last day, let's say, and then you're like, okay, maybe that photo that didn't receive 100 likes is not so important to me, then I shouldn't be looking at the amount of likes that I got into this photo. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe that course about painting that I thought that I really wanted to do, now it's not so relevant at this time. Maybe I don't actually want to become a painter, let's say. Or this things starts to allow you to truly see, okay, what is in the moment the path that I want to take and the things that truly matters to me in the moment.